Good evening. Tonight, I invite you to leave the world of sharp edges and loud noises behind. We are going to a place of softness, a place of quiet comfort. Deep within a forest of whispering pines stands a small wooden cabin, where the air always smells of damp earth and clean, fresh rain. This is the home of a weaver, but they do not simply work with wool and thread. They are a collector of atmospheres, a crafter of comfort, a weaver of the very scent of the rain. It is a story designed to wrap around you like the softest blanket, to quiet the storms in your mind, and to guide you gently into a peaceful, restorative sleep. Come, the hearth is warm, and a story is waiting to unfold. Find a position that feels deeply comfortable to you. Allow your body to settle, to feel heavy and supported. Close your eyes and take a slow, deep breath in, imagining you are breathing in the cool, clean air of a forest just after a gentle rain. And as you exhale, release everything else. Let the tension in your shoulders melt away. Let the thoughts of the day drift from your mind like clouds passing in the sky. Take another breath, and this time, listen. In the quiet of your mind, begin to hear the soft, pattering sound of raindrops on leaves. A gentle, rhythmic pitter-patter. It is not a storm, but a soft, cleansing shower. With each drop, you feel a little calmer, a little more at peace. Now, bring your awareness to the scent in the air. Imagine the rich, earthy smell of damp soil, the sharp, clean fragrance of pine needles, the sweet, green scent of moss on ancient stones. This is petrichor, the scent of the earth after rain. Breathe it in deeply. It is the smell of renewal, of peace, of nature sighing in contentment. Let this scent fill you, washing away any lingering worries. You feel a sense of profound calm, as if you are standing in this peaceful, rain-drenched forest yourself. The air is cool on your skin, but you are not cold. Ahead of you, through the tall, dark trunks of the pine trees, you see a gentle, warm light. It's a golden, buttery glow, emanating from the window of a small, wooden cabin. It looks safe. It looks warm. You feel a gentle pull towards it, a promise of comfort. You walk slowly along a path of soft pine needles, your footsteps making no sound. The soft sound of the rain has faded, leaving only a quiet dripping from the leaves above. As you reach the cabin's door, made of sturdy, dark wood, it opens silently for you, as if it were expecting you. You step across the threshold, out of the cool, damp air, and into a world of warmth, and into our story. The inside of the cabin enveloped you in immediate comfort. The air was a tapestry of gentle scents. The dry, woody aroma of the pine logs that built the walls. The faint, sweet smell of chamomile from a steaming mug on a nearby table. And underneath it all, the clean, unmistakable fragrance of a recent rain shower. A stone hearth held a merrily crackling fire, its light painting the room in soft, dancing shades of orange and gold. This was the home and workshop of Elowen. Elowen was a weaver, a quiet soul who moved with the gentle, deliberate pace of the forest itself. Their hands, though nimble and sure on the loom, always seemed to be listening, as if trying to catch a whisper on the wind. The cabin was filled with the tools of their trade, but with a unique addition. Alongside shelves stacked high with skeins of soft, undyed wool in shades of cloud white, fog gray, and sky blue, were dozens upon dozens of small, cork-stoppered glass jars. Each jar held a clear, shimmering liquid and was labeled with a small, neat tag. First spring drizzle, late August sun shower, October's morning mist. Elowen did not just weave wool. They wove atmospheres. They had the rare, quiet magic of being able to capture the very essence, the very scent, of a rainfall. Their day began not with a clock, but with the quality of the light filtering through the window. This morning, the light was soft and diffused, the sky a blanket of uniform gray. A gentle rain was coming. Elowen smiled. This was a good day for a harvest. The process of capturing a scent was a delicate art. Elowen took down several of their special nets. They were not for catching fish or butterflies, but for catching feelings. The nets were woven from materials that held on to memory and scent. Fine, strong spider silk for resilience. Soft moss fibers for their earthy notes. And the gossamer thin petals of the ghost flower, which were known to trap moisture and fragrance. Elowen carefully hung these nets on the broad, covered porch of the cabin, positioning them where the breeze would pass through but the heavy drops would not tear them. Then, they sat in their rocking chair, mug of tea in hand, and waited. The rain began as a whisper. A few, hesitant drops tapping on the roof. Then it grew into a steady, soft, vertical shower. It was a kind rain, a giving rain. It washed the pollen from the air, darkened the bark of the trees, and drew the deep, rich scent from the forest floor. Elowen closed their eyes, not just smelling the air, but feeling its character. It was a scent of contentment, of thirst being quenched, of quiet growth. It was perfect. The shower lasted for perhaps an hour, then slowly tapered off, leaving the world clean, quiet, and glistening. The air was thick with its beautiful, earthy perfume. Now, Elowen's true work began. They went out onto the porch, where the nets hung, heavy and glistening with captured raindrops. One by one, they carefully took them down. They held a large glass jar underneath the first net and began to wring it out, ever so gently. It was not water that dripped into the jar, but something more concentrated, more magical. A clear, shimmering liquid that held the entire memory of the last hour. The scent of wet pine, damp earth, and the clean, pure smell of the rain itself. They repeated the process with each net until the jar was full. They corked it tightly and wrote on a fresh tag, "The gentle shower of a Tuesday morning." Placing the new jar amongst its brethren on the shelf, Elowen felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They now had a new color for their palette, a new note for their symphony of scents. They turned to their large, wooden loom that dominated the center of the room. It was time to take this feeling of profound peace and weave it into something that could be held, something that could offer comfort through the longest of nights. The magic of Elowen's blankets was a quiet, well-known secret in the small villages that dotted the valleys beyond the forest. People didn't speak of it in loud, boisterous terms. It was a knowledge passed down in whispers, from one tired soul to another. A farmer whose worries about the harvest kept him awake. A new mother trying to soothe her restless child. A scholar whose mind wouldn't quiet itself from the pursuit of knowledge. They would all, eventually, find their way to the small cabin in the woods. Elowen never turned anyone away. They would listen, not just to the words people said, but to the weariness in their voices, the tension in their shoulders. They would learn about the source of the sleeplessness. For a mind that raced with anxieties, a blanket woven with the scent of a steady, grounding winter rain might be prescribed. For a heart heavy with sorrow, the gentle, hopeful scent of the first drizzle of spring could offer a quiet comfort. Each blanket was a unique medicine for the soul. One afternoon, as gray clouds once again gathered, a gentle knock came upon Elowen's door. When they opened it, they saw a woman with kind, worried eyes, holding the hand of a small girl who was clutching her mother's coat tightly. The girl, whose name was Luna, had hair as dark as a moonless night, and eyes that were wide with a deep, unspoken fear. We were told you are the weaver," the mother said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "My Luna. She is terrified of storms. Not the gentle showers, but the real storms. The thunder, the lightning. She cannot sleep. She hides and trembles, and no amount of soothing seems to help." Elowen's gaze fell upon the child. They knelt down slowly, so as not to be intimidating. "Hello, Luna," Elowen said, their voice as soft as carded wool. "That sounds very frightening." Luna did not speak. She only burrowed her face deeper into her mother's coat. "We have a big storm predicted for the end of the week," the mother continued, her hand stroking her daughter's hair. "I was hoping. Is it possible? Could you weave a blanket of courage for her? A blanket that could make her feel safe?" Elowen thought for a moment. They did not weave courage, or bravery, or other such bold emotions. Their magic was quieter, more gentle. They wove peace. They wove calm. They wove the feeling of safety. And perhaps, that was all the courage one needed. "I cannot weave courage," Elowen said honestly, their eyes still on the little girl. "But I can weave the scent of a rain that has nothing to be afraid of. A rain that is gentle, and life-giving, and knows only how to nurture things." They stood up and walked over to the shelves of glass jars. Their fingers drifted over the labels, passing by the dramatic scents of thunderstorms, and the melancholic mists of autumn. They were searching for something specific. Finally, their hand came to rest on a small, old jar at the back of the shelf. The liquid inside seemed to have a particularly soft, silvery shimmer. The label was faded, but the words were still clear. "The first spring rain after the longest winter." This was a special one. An essence collected years ago, after a winter so long and hard that the entire forest had seemed to be holding its breath. The rain that finally broke the cold was not a dramatic downpour, but a soft, persistent shower that had whispered to the sleeping seeds and woken the hibernating animals. Its scent was not just of rain, but of relief, of hope, of the promise that even the longest, darkest times must eventually give way to light. Elowen took the jar from the shelf and held it out. "This," they said softly, "is the scent I will use. It is the bravest, gentlest rain I have ever known. It will be a blanket of pure, quiet hope." Luna, peeking out from her mother's coat, looked at the shimmering jar. For the first time, a tiny flicker of curiosity seemed to outweigh her fear. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you," whispered her mother, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We will return in 2 days' time." As they left, Elowen looked down at the precious jar in their hands. They knew this would be one of the most important blankets they had ever woven. It would not just be a tool for sleep, but a shield for a small, frightened heart. With Luna's blanket in mind, a different kind of energy filled the cabin. It was not a hurried energy, but one of deep, quiet focus. This blanket needed more than just skill. It needed intention. It needed to be a vessel of pure, unwavering calm. Elowen began by selecting the wool. They passed over the grays of the storm clouds and the dark blues of the night sky. For Luna, they chose the softest lamb's wool they had, in a color like the inside of a cloud, a gentle, creamy white. It was wool from a flock that grazed in high, peaceful mountain meadows, and it seemed to carry a memory of that quiet sunshine within its fibers. They spent the rest of the day carding and spinning this wool, their movements rhythmic and meditative. The whirring of the spinning wheel was a soft, constant lullaby in the cabin, a counterpoint to the crackling of the fire. As they spun the wool into fine, strong thread, they thought of Luna. They pictured her feeling of fear, the way she hid from the sound of thunder. And then, they pictured the opposite. They pictured her wrapped in warmth, feeling safe, her breathing slow and even, her mind at peace. They spun this image, this feeling of safety, directly into the thread. The next morning, Elowen approached the loom. They warped it carefully with the newly spun, cloud-white thread, the vertical lines straight and true, like gentle streams of falling rain. The stage was set. They took down the special jar, the first spring rain after the longest winter. They uncorked it, and a scent of incredible purity and hope filled the room. It smelled of thawed earth, of new leaves unfurling, of the deep, clean satisfaction of a world awakening. Elowen did not soak the thread. The magic was in the subtlety. Using a small eyedropper made of glass, they would place a single, shimmering drop of the rain essence onto the weft thread, just before weaving it through the warp. And so, the weaving began. The sounds of the loom filled the cabin. The soft thump of the beater pressing the threads together. The smooth, wooden clack of the shuttle passing from one hand to the other. It was a slow, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of creation. Clack. Elowen wove in the memory of the first snowdrop flower pushing its way through the last of the snow. Thump. They wove in the feeling of the sun's warmth returning to the forest floor. Clack. They wove in the sound of a mother bird singing to her newly hatched chicks in a nearby nest. Thump. They wove in the quiet strength of the ancient pine trees, who had weathered every storm and still stood tall. With every pass of the shuttle, the blanket grew, line by line. And with every line, the gentle scent of that hopeful spring rain became more deeply embedded in the fabric. It was not an overpowering perfume, but a subtle aura that seemed to breathe from the wool itself. It was a scent that spoke directly to the oldest parts of the mind, the parts that understood safety, shelter, and the promise of a new day. Elowen worked through the day and into the evening, their focus absolute. They didn't weave complex images of trees or animals. Instead, they wove textures. They created a pattern that felt like soft, fluffy clouds, bordered by a design that mimicked the look of gentle raindrops on a pane of glass. It was a blanket that was meant to be felt as much as it was to be seen. As the final touch, when the blanket was nearly complete, Elowen took a single thread of shimmering, silver silk. In one corner of the cloud-white blanket, they carefully embroidered a small, simple crescent moon. A quiet nod to the little girl who had inspired this creation. A small, shining beacon of light in the soft, woven sky. Finally, it was done. Elowen cut the blanket from the loom. It was heavy with the weight of soft wool and good intentions. They folded it carefully, the captured scent of a long-ago spring rain held gently within its fibers, waiting. 2 days later, just as the afternoon sun began to dip behind the tall pines, Elowen saw 2 figures walking up the path. It was Luna and her mother, returning as promised. As if on cue, the sky, which had been clear all day, began to change. Dark, heavy clouds rolled in from the west, and the wind began to whisper a little more urgently through the trees. A storm was indeed coming. Elowen saw the change in Luna immediately. The little girl's shoulders tensed, and she moved closer to her mother, her wide eyes fixed on the darkening sky. Elowen opened the door before they could knock, a warm, welcoming smile on their face. "Welcome back," they said softly. "Please, come in from the wind." Inside, the fire was crackling, and the cabin was a haven of warmth and light against the growing gloom outside. The first heavy drops of rain began to spatter against the roof. Luna flinched at the sound. "It is ready," Elowen said, their voice calm and steady. They walked over to a large wooden chest and lifted out the folded, cloud-white blanket. They didn't just hand it to the child. They approached her slowly and gently unfolded it. The scent immediately filled the air around them. Not the sharp, electric smell of the coming storm, but the soft, earthy, hopeful fragrance of that long-ago spring rain. It was a scent of pure tranquility. "This is for you, Luna," Elowen said, draping the blanket gently around the little girl's shoulders. The effect was instant. The moment the soft, heavy wool touched her, Luna's tense little body seemed to relax. She took a deep breath, and her eyes, which had been wide with fear, softened. She pulled the blanket tighter around her, burrowing her face into its comforting folds. It smells like my grandmother's garden after she waters the flowers," she whispered, her voice muffled by the wool. "That was a very kind rain," Elowen replied, sitting down in the armchair by the fire and patting the seat beside them. "That rain didn't have any thunder in it. It only knew how to help things grow. It fell on a day when all the little woodland creatures were coming out of their winter sleep. They weren't afraid of it. They were happy, because they knew it meant that spring, and warmth, and sunshine were coming back." As Elowen spoke, their voice was as soft and steady as the rain they were describing. Outside, the real storm began. The wind howled a little louder, and a low, distant rumble of thunder echoed through the valley. Luna tensed for a moment, but then she pulled the blanket tighter, buried her nose in its gentle scent, and rested her head against her mother's side. The scent of the spring rain was more real, more present, than the sound of the distant storm. The blanket had created a small, safe world for her, an island of calm in a sea of noise. Her mother looked at Elowen, her eyes filled with a gratitude so deep it needed no words. She gently stroked Luna's hair, as the child's eyelids began to grow heavy. The fear was still there, somewhere in the world outside, but it could no longer reach her. She was wrapped in the scent of a better, gentler weather. Wrapped in a cloud-white blanket, nestled between her mother and the warmth of the hearth. Luna's fear gave way to a profound sense of peace. The distant rumble of thunder was no longer a threat, but a faraway echo, muffled and made insignificant by the comforting weight of the wool, and the gentle scent of spring that rose from it. Her breathing, once shallow and quick with anxiety, deepened into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. Elowen and Luna's mother sat in comfortable silence, watching the little girl. They didn't need to speak. The quiet crackling of the fire, the soft drumming of the rain on the roof, and the sight of the peacefully sleeping child, was a conversation in itself. The cabin was a bubble of tranquility, holding firm against the wild weather outside. Luna slept soundly, more deeply than she had in a very long time. And in her sleep, she dreamed. She dreamed she was standing barefoot in a meadow of soft, green grass. Tiny, white flowers dotted the landscape. A gentle rain was falling, but it wasn't cold or frightening. The raindrops were soft and warm, like tiny, sparkling beads of light. They landed on her skin and dissolved into a feeling of pure happiness. She wasn't running or hiding. She was dancing. She tilted her face up to the sky, letting the gentle shower wash over her. And she laughed, a sound as clear and happy as the rain itself. In her dream, the little silver thread moon that Elowen had embroidered in the corner of her blanket was hanging in the sky, watching over her with a gentle, smiling light. The storm passed as all storms do. The rain softened to a drizzle, then stopped altogether. The clouds began to part, and a pale, watery sunlight filtered through the trees, making the wet leaves of the forest glisten as if they were coated in diamonds. It was this light that gently woke Luna. She stirred, blinked her eyes open, and looked around the quiet cabin. She was still wrapped in the blanket. The fire was now a bed of soft, glowing embers. She felt calm. She felt rested. And she felt no fear. She looked up at her mother and smiled. A bright, genuine smile. "I had a nice dream," she said simply. When it was time to leave, Luna clutched her blanket tightly. She walked over to Elowen, who was standing by the door. "Thank you, Weaver," Luna said, her voice clear and confident. "My blanket smells like dancing." Elowen smiled, their heart full. "That's the very best thing a rain-scented blanket can smell like," they replied. They watched as Luna and her mother walked away down the damp, sun-dappled path. The little girl no longer hiding, but walking with a new, light step, her cloud-white blanket wrapped around her like a shield of peace. Elowen closed the door and returned to their loom. The world outside was fresh and clean after the rain. A new scent was already in the air. A new story waiting to be collected. But for now, they simply sat, listening to the quiet dripping of water from the eaves of the cabin, feeling the deep, quiet satisfaction of their work. A storm had come and gone, and because of a few threads and the memory of a gentle rain, a small child could now sleep in peace. And as you listen to the last echoes of the rain, you too can feel that same sense of safety, that same gentle peace, wrapping around you now, inviting you into your own deep and restful sleep. Good night.